What's going on, everybody? It's Fearless here, and today we're going to take a look at making a basic melody in Ableton. So let's jump right into this tutorial. Okay, so when you're building out your melody, it can be really useful to pick out what scale that you're going to use and lay out the notes that you can use within that scale. This is going to help you build out the chords in that scale and then any other off melodies that you're going to play with it, and you're going to know exactly what notes you can play and what notes you can't play. So let's take a look at how you can do this in Ableton. So I've went ahead and made these different MIDI files here, and I'd recommend that you also make them, and you could probably purchase them online as well or get them in different packs. But we'll just use like a B minor, for example. So what I've done here is I've actually outlined all the different notes that I can use in a B minor. And what I do here is I just push them back before the actual start of this bar. So that way I can go ahead and build out my stuff now. And it's not going to play any of these notes, but I know exactly what notes I can play in this B minor scale. So if you don't want to build out the MIDI, you can just type into Google what is a B minor scale or whatever scale that you're going to use, and then go ahead and outline these different notes before you get going. So we're going to start off by building out a simple chord progression. So basically when you're building a chord, you're going to take one of the notes here and you're going to go up two of the highlighted notes from there. So our next one would be D, and the next one from there would be an F. And that's going to build out a B chord. Alright guys, so once you find a good melody progression that you like, you're good to go. So this is what we have right now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a little more harmonics to it. And there's a couple ways you could do this. You could either go up to the next note that's going to be in that chord, but let's listen to this really quick. So I actually don't like how that sounds that much, so we're actually going to take what this bottom note is, and we're going to go to that note, and now listen to it. That sounds really good to me, so we're going to do that for each of these notes now. Alright, so one thing that I'm noticing about this melody is it's kind of occupying a lot of the top frequencies. So what I'm actually going to do here is I'm going to pitch this down one octave. That way it's not going so crazy in the highs. And the last thing that we're going to do with this here is we're also going to build on to the bass tones a little bit as well. So I'm going to take all of these bottom notes and copy them down one octave. So it plays a little more of the bassy tones with it as well. Alright, so now we can move on to one of our progression melodies. So when you're doing your progression melodies, you can either just get rid of these altogether, or you could deactivate them so you know which ones that you've used already. And what I like to do with these is I actually like to play it by hand, and I like to set up my fingers on the keyboard so I know which notes that I can actually play, and then I'll play the chords in the background. I kind of play something around on the keyboard along to it because I get better ideas that way. So I'm going to do that. Alright, so once you have your notes down, and by the way, if you didn't know, this little square button right here will be highlighted if you're pressing notes, you're playing notes around and you're not recording, so you don't always have to record. So you can just press this little square note. Then I can press Control U to line them all up, and if you press this legato button, it'll stretch them all out all the way. So let's listen to what I got here. Alright, so that note is a little bit off, so we're gonna push this in a little bit and see if that sounds right. Perfect. Now for the last part, we're going to make a little arp. And so what we can do is we can actually copy over the notes that we're using for our piano notes. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take out the bottom notes and I'm going to raise these up an octave. And then once you find an arp sound you like, you should be good to go from there. So one thing you want to note is that you're filling in the right frequencies. So if I take this ARP here and I raise it up another octave, you're going to see that it's going to be fighting with our lead, and you're not going to hear each of the things individually. So they're occupying a lot of the same frequencies, so it kind of clashes and it doesn't sound that great. But once we put it back down, you can hear everything together and it sounds really nice. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through and I'm going to EQ each of these individually. I'm going to cut out some of the lows and any of the frequencies we don't need. So we'll start with the lead. So this is mostly higher octave notes, so we can take out a lot of these lows here. But we don't want to take out too much, because if we start to take out too much in this area, you're going to see that it loses all of its sound. So if we left it like that, it doesn't have much substance to it. So we got to leave in right there, like right in the 400 area. Now for the piano, we're going to leave in more of the lows, because this is going to be the most lowest occupying melody that we have. But we want to take out enough so that it's not going to clash with the 808. So that sounds pretty good. I'm also going to take out some of the highs to leave room for our other instruments here, so that it's not clashing in the highs. We want to leave room for those other instruments since they're in the higher frequency ranges. Good enough, sounds good, we can move on. I think that sounds pretty good right there. So once you have all those EQ'd, now you're just going to want to take a listen to it and make sure you can still hear them all, and if you need to adjust any of the levels, this is a good time to do that. Another thing that you should always do is you should always check it in mono to make sure you can hear everything in mono. So what you can do is go to your utility here and click on mono. And what this is going to do, actually, let's take this off. We want to put the mono on our group. So we want to make sure it's affecting all of our melodies at once. And if you don't know how to put it in a group, you can select each one of these and then press Command G or Control G. Otherwise, just go ahead and stick it on your master. So what mono is going to do is push everything to the center, so if anything's overlapping, you're definitely going to notice it here. So let's take a listen. Okay, so we can still hear everything. We know we're good to go. We don't need to carve out any more frequencies. The last thing I'm going to do is kind of add some distortion and some like tape effect to it. So you could use an RC20, you could use an Izotope Vinyl, which is a free plugin, or you could use cassette, which I've been using a lot lately. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to affect each of these differently. Okay, so what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to put the cassette before the EQ, or whatever vinyl distortion you're using, so that any of those added frequencies that it's going to be adding are not going to add to the lows or highs or muddy it up, because we want to keep it how it is from what we did with our distortion previously. So with this one, it's a little bit of a sharper sound, so there's a good preset in here that kind of mellows it out a little bit. So let's listen to that. And usually for the chords, I like to put a certain effect on here called warm keys. That always sounds pretty good, so let's listen to that. Just gonna add warmth and body to it. Versus this. Makes a big difference. This one also makes it louder, so you're gonna have to adjust all the levels after you use these again. And on the ARP, I'll use the free one that I was talking about, the Izotope Vinyl. So go ahead and search this up if you don't have it already. There's some useful stuff in here. You can pick out the different years of the different vinyls that you want. We'll use 1970 for now, because screw it. And then you can play around with these different ones. So you got some noises. You can add some noise to it if you want. Some electrical noise, stuff like that. I like to put a little bit of the wear on it, which is going to kind of cut some of those high frequencies out. Maybe just a little bit, like 7. And then the warp depth is the awesome one because it's what's going to warp the sound. So let's listen to this on full. Just warps the hell out of it, right? So I'm just going to put a little bit in there. Alright, so now let's listen to them all again and make sure the levels are still sitting right. Alright guys, so this wraps up the melody tutorial. Now this is super basic melody tutorial. You could go above and beyond and do some crazy shit with it. But as you can see, it actually sounded really good. So one thing I want to leave you with is simplicity is key. Remember that. You don't need to make these melodies super crazy, doing a million thousand different things. You want them to be playing nice tones each time. And sometimes the simplest stuff is the best. So keep that in mind. But anyways guys, if you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button. We're uploading new videos every single week. And hit that like button for me so we can get this video out there for everybody else. And I'll be seeing you again next week. Peace out.